Today's parable comes from Luke 14 again. And I'm going to start off, there's a little bit of context to the parable. So we're going to start off at verse 25 to kind of include that context, even though the parable doesn't really start until verse 28. So verse 25 says, "Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he can't be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is unable to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going out to encounter another king in war, will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20? If not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." This is a really simple parable. If you are not willing to make your faith, if you are not willing to make Jesus Christ the most important thing in your life, he's saying, you're not ready to be my disciple. And that sounds really harsh, but when it comes down to it, right? Christ is the horizon for everything we do. In eternity, none of the other things that we choose to prioritize are going to matter. Because your eternity is decided by your faith in Jesus. If you have faith in Christ, if that is your priority, then he says, okay, eternity in heaven, eternity in a new creation with God. Awesome. If it's not, and if these other things have become more important to you and it shuts your faith out, it kills your faith, you are no longer connected to Christ, your eternity is going to be spent in a much worse place. And now this is an important distinction, is because Christ is the most important thing in our life doesn't mean that we all become monks, right? We don't give up everything else and say, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to Christ. No. But what it does mean is because that is the most important thing in your life, it's going to impact everything else you do in your life. So your job, because Christ is the most important thing in your life, you are going to do your work honestly. You are going to be faithful in how you do your job. You are going to be a positive witness to Christ. And when people compliment you and they say, oh, you're doing great, oh, you're doing all these things great, your response isn't, you're right, I'm pretty awesome. Your response is, it is what Christ would have me do. And you have the humility to direct the glory to him instead, because you're doing it for his glorification. So that's in your job. In your family, the most important thing, if your kids really want to get involved in something, and it is consistently taking away their Sunday mornings, it's consistently robbing you of family devotional time, that means you're going to say, kids, we're not doing this because it is detrimental to our faith as a family, our faith together. Relationships, if someone is dragging you away from the faith, then you say, hey, this is not a healthy relationship for me to be in. And I think that's one of the more tricky ones, because you have to balance, well, are they drawing me away from the faith, or am I drawing them into the faith? Because there's a balance there, and frequently that comes down to a whole host of things. How well rooted you are in the faith, how is your faith community, how is their community outside of the faith, who has a stronger personality, like all sorts of things. But the key here is the crux, the horizon on which everything else in our life and in creation pivots, is Jesus Christ. And this parable is saying, if you're not ready for that, if you're not ready for Jesus to be the horizon of your life, then you got to seriously consider the cost of discipleship, because that is the cost of discipleship. So that it's a tough parable. It is. And if you watch this devotion and you're struggling with it, please reach out to me. I'd love to sit down and talk with you about it. So with that, brothers and sisters, go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.